Hi, this is Clarence Moye with Awards Daily here with Da'Vine Joy Randolph, star of The Holdovers from Alexander Payne, which is currently in theaters. Da'Vine, it's a pleasure to meet you.
So nice to meet you as well.
So I have to start with what made you interested in this role of Mary, such a poignant character? What was it about the character of Mary that spoke to you?
Well, Alexander had called me and reached out and thought that I would be a great fit for this character, which is interesting because we had never met before. But when he gave me the script, after sort of prefacing the role to me, what I loved about her was that she had such a full life and a complete arc and story. Oftentimes, I have to come from a place of lack in regards to the details of scripts and character development. And it's always been my job to fill in the blanks and make that become more. So when I saw that, oh wow, in fact, this is already coming with a great deal of that, I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be good.
So talking about, obviously there is a great deal of material there within that fantastic screenplay. And she has that it already starts with that very tender and devastating backstory of the death of her son who has died in the Vietnam War. Um, what additional material did you start to think of within yourself as to how you wanted to play, kind of what would infer your choices throughout the film, in terms of a backstory beyond the death of her son?
Yeah, I mean, I used a lot of women both in my life as
Mhm.
references, women in the world as references, especially during that time period. And though I wasn't in that time period, I know what it is to be a black woman in predominant white spaces and how it can feel very isolating. Um, Also, I attended prep schools my high school, up to high school career, and then went to Yale. So I know that Ivy League dynamic. And I just kind of focused on, telling the truth of this lady's story and finding authentic moments that wasn't too extra or fabricating. And I really wanted to focus on the stages of grief. And so uh, for me, it was as if we've realized and figured out that he's basically only been gone for 2, maybe 3 months. It's still very early. And I wanted throughout the course of the movie for her to go through all the stages of grief.
That makes total sense. I have to ask, a lot of actors don't read reviews of their own performance. Do you read
I do
reviews of
not.
your own? You do not. Do you mind
Mhm.
if I quote something that is good, that is positive? It's
Okay.
there Pete Hammond mentioned that you have this unique look of this unique way of saying so much with your eyes that is not communicated through dialogue, and
Mm,
I 100% agree with that. It is
thank you.
one of the most brilliant things that you do in this performance is a lot of reaction work. How do you develop that as an actor?
Number one, I think out of the womb, I've always been that person where um I can't really hide how I feel. You know how people say like, "Girl, fix your face. It's all over your face." I've always naturally just been that person. So I think even in other projects where the camera cuts to me as like a reaction shot, that's just me being. I don't know. They're not saying like, and now we're cutting to you, Davine. How do you feel about what they just said? That's just me just being in the moment and responding to what the person's saying. But what was unique about this, and when I read the script, I said to my acting coach, I was like, "Oh, in many ways, it's like I'm in two movies." And he was like, "Well, what do you mean?" And I said, "Well, there is like, to quote like Singing in the Rain, there's like the talkies, and then it's like I'm a silent movie actress. That there would be 3 pages of scenes in which David so eloquently and beautifully wrote, almost like poetry. Like it would just go into like uh, a novella, like not in a dramatic sense, but you know what I mean, like poetic prose almost describing a scene. that
Hmm.
I'm in. And what I then did was I then created for myself in the moment like a dialogue or a monologue, as it were, that would go and resound through me while we were filming. Um, I had to learn to get very comfortable to slow down. I talk very fast in real life. I live in the city I've always had. I'm a Gemini. It's a lot of stuff going on,
What's
right?
going on?
And she has a completely different, co- damn near polar opposite
Hmm.
um, energy than I do. And so I had to learn to slow down, that every single word I said has meaning. There's a bit of stoicism and a grace and femininity that she has that I hope to take on more of personally. But that it was very different. I really had to undergo a full transformation. And the certain things like hair and wardrobe and um, the dialect and me smoking were great markers that helped me get into her and stay in her for the course of the work day. But when the work was done, I released her. Or rather, I delicately placed her because we filmed in the space, right? Meaning there was no set.
Right.
So if I filmed in the living room, for example, for like the newlywed scene, respectfully, I would then leave her there,
Hmm.
and then I would go home, and then I got to get my energy back, myself back. I would have almost like this ritualistic process in which I decompressed from the day and returned back to myself. I never went to bed as her. Never. Because it was too much. We were already in Boston in the dead of winter. You know what I mean? Like there's a quietness with snow.
Hmm.
And when it's like that first snowfall, you notice how it's like deafeningly quiet? Like it's
Yes.
so quiet it's loud.
Hmm.
And that when you're walking on fresh snow, the crunch is so loud it feels like it's in your inner ear, all that distance from your foot to your ear, but it's almost like this heightened sound. And that's how the film was. It was heightened, that every sensory was heightened, the smell, the sounds of when the heat went on, this like tawny ting 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 sound, and then this quiet "Poof," and that was when the fire, I guess, was lit. And you could hear it. It was weird. It was like this altered sensory experience. But
Wow.
it was because it was three people.
Right.
And then the director that's in the space with you right next to the camera guy. So it was so intimate and slow and delicate and deliberate that it just, we had all the right elements to make this be what it needed to be.
Right. And I love this idea. First of all, thank you for letting me read that quote. I'm sorry to invade your space, but it was such an
No,
astute.
I get nervous and
No,
embarrassed. That's all. But
no,
I
no, no, not at
appreciate
all.
you asking.
But it's such an interesting observation that you immediately recognize that this is a two levels of a performance. This is a spoken performance and an unspoken performance.
Yeah,
Because
I've never had that before.
no, and it really, looking back over the performance, I can't wait to see the film again so I can continue to appreciate those two levels, because it's
Hmm.
and picked up on it immediately. But there's so much that is going on with Mary that is unspoken, that is reaction shots, and it's not comic reaction shots. This is character
No.
definition reaction
Well,
shots.
and that's the thing about grief too that I began to understand in my research. Grief is the same thing. Like I say, I say break up because everyone has dealt with that and or know what that is. And you know how like when there's something that's very much so been a very close, intimate part of you and part of your day to day in your world, and when that is removed,
Hmm.
you're not even yourself. You're trying to figure out who am I, right? You can no longer talk to or call the person who you spoke to all day long, every day, for many days, months, years, whatever, right? And so then there's a lot of conversations being held internally.
Mhm.
A lot of times because we are afraid to say those things out loud.
Mhm.
A lot of times it's because we have a gajillion thoughts running through our brain. That's why it can sometimes be awkward. She says some weird things sometimes. Not weird, but like it's just like, huh? You know what I mean? Like she's not reading a room and some when she's deep in it. When she's deep in it, she's not reading the room. She says some things that you're like, oh, she's not all the way here with us. You know what I mean? And so because of that, I allowed myself to get lost in thoughts. And so, like, of a silent movie scene, it would be like, for example, I remember one whole day we filmed it, and in the movie, it is maybe 15 seconds, but for an entire day, we filmed me being in my room, playing with a puzzle, smoking, and then getting ready for a party
Right.
and picking out my outfit. An entire day.
Wow.
And all you saw was me putting together a puzzle for a second. And then later you saw me looking at myself in the mirror and going to pick out my dress. We did it
Wow.
for a whole day. So with that, I really got comfortable in the space and I just, as an actor you try to ignore the people, but really I wanted to allow myself to be a vessel, to be open, to be as personal and vulnerable and let the viewer in
Mhm.
to what I imagine this woman would be experiencing. I wanted to have this fly on the wall, like surreal experience for people to see, like in the most intimate of spaces, this is what it looks like or can look like for someone to be um, battling grief.
Talking about grief, when I saw the film in Telluride, when it premiered there, I had just lost my mother a couple of weeks before.
I'm so
And
sorry.
thank you. When you get to the scene where you're taking your son's baby things at your sister's out of the box and handing those down and kind of saying
Yeah.
goodbye to some things, tears streaming down my face, and admittedly it was still a fresh moment in my life, probably still remains so. But how do you as an actor then, considering you are living in that space, you're living in that character for that 8 hours a day that you're shooting, how do you get into that space emotionally? It must have been incredibly difficult to film.
It can be. It can be, but I try to take great measures to take great care of myself.
Mhm.
I tried to get good sleep as much as possible. I wasn't, I was social, but sometimes where they would like, oh, it's the culture, oh, let's go out for da da da. I have to get my sleep.
Mhm.
I need my full 8. Um, I would get lots of sleep. I would stay personally lighthearted. I'd be cracking jokes and laughing with Paul and Dominic. When I came home, like I said, I had that ritualistic thing of coming back to Earth, so to speak. I say it's like my little spinning top, like an inception of where I come back to my center. And I had to actually do the opposite so that I had space in a full container to go there. I'm not gonna sit there and listen to sad music all day, or you know what I mean. Of when you know what you're doing, you don't have to. And this is no slight. Let me be clear on method acting or
Right.
anything like that. But for me, when I knew what I was doing, it would have actually been detrimental for me if I would have stayed in this grief-stricken place. So When it was time to do it, I did it. And then when that was done, I kept it moving because more times than not, the best that you have to offer is in the beginning of the takes.
Mhm.
After 2 to 3 takes, they're really just nitpicking versions of, you know what I mean, certain really specific things. But your best stuff is your first 3 takes.
Mm.
So imagine if I'm spending an entire day being sad. That first hour, I'm giving away my best stuff to what, hair and makeup in the trailer while I'm getting ready. You know what I mean? Like it.
Right.
So for me, and in a lot of ways, I learned that from Eddie Murphy too when we were doing Dolomite. As much as he's this larger than life character that he can give so much to, the text and bringing these characters, memorable characters, iconic characters to life. In between, when they say cut,
Mm.
he's like a monk. Like he's very quiet, stoic to himself. He's playing on his guitar and he's zoning and chilling out so that he can give you
Right.
what he needs to give you. Because when they say action, it's some of the most compelling and most beautiful thing I've ever seen. So similarly, I caught wind of that early on in my career, and I was like, oh, okay. If I can figure out a way to do that, what my version of that would be, I would love to do that.
Mhm. So, last question for you:
Hmm.
what was the most challenging scene for you to play? I don't want to assume that it was that emotional scene because different actors approach different things. What was the most um, difficult scene for you to film?
I mean, that obviously had its challenges. And by challenge, it was, Da'Vine, are you going to let these people really see a deep place of pain that you possess?
Mhm.
Meaning you, the viewer, meaning my coworkers,
Right. You have to make yourself vulnerable.
Alex, the DP. Are you willing to go there? Because of it is. It's a selfless thing to do. It is. I see myself, not to get too spiritual, but I see myself as a vessel
Mhm.
for said role, said woman to take over, embody this space. I did Ghost the Musical. It's, to me, I'm like, it's really not all that different, you know what I mean, of this spirit, this energy taking over you and you becoming this thing. It's very intense.
Mhm.
And that was why another reason I was like, oh, I can't be method, as it were. For it's too heavy
Right.
for me. I couldn't do that. So that was a big thing of why it made it difficult. But I quickly understood you're going to miss the mark if you don't go there, Da'Vine. If you don't do what needs to be done in this moment, you know what needs to be done. Not like get over yourself, but get over, not, I don't know how to explain it, not get over it, but you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
you just have to do it.
Right.
You have to. This is gonna pay off more in the end. It was more of me worried or nervous of, are they gonna, you know what I mean, treat me different or think, you know what I mean? Because we essentially we are all strangers. We don't know each other, right? And that's the weird thing about acting, where whether you have to be love interest or whatever, it's like you don't know these people, and now you're exposing yourselves in the deepest parts of yourself to strangers. But I would say actually the truly the most difficult part was a combo of couple of things. The cigarettes were very challenging. I'm not even going to front. It was very challenging because you, it is a whole nother character and it will upstage you. It will. And you've got to create a natural, also, I'm not a smoker. So you have to create a natural energy for yourself. Excuse me, a natural rhythm for yourself of when you're going to put it to your mouth, when you're going to pull it, when you're going to say your words, and when you're going to release it. And that all has to happen naturally and not stop the text of what's going on. Also, not conveniently only smoking when you're not talking either, because that's not real. A real smoker, they need that hit so bad, they will do it while they're talking, right? So I had to learn that. The dialect was a bit of a challenge, but I knew it was necessary because it was so nuanced. And then lastly, it was the silent moments because I was by myself. Alex was there with me, but I was by myself, and so I had to figure out a way very quickly of how to fill the space.
Well, I think that translates a great performance into something that is truly remarkable.
Thank
You are
you.
fantastic in this film, and best of luck to you in this season ahead. Um,
Thank you so much. I
very
appreciate
much looking
it.
forward to seeing what you do next as well. Thank you, Da'Vine.
Thank you.